What do I like really most? I think it's having it's working for yourself. It's being in control. Not having to rely on other individuals. When you're a broker, it's all about you. It's all about you and the clients. There's nothing holding you back. There's nothing getting in the way. And I think I like that freedom. Let alone work for myself. It's the freedom. My time spent with my clients. There's no office politics or anything holding me back. I think after many years in the corporate world, that is really what you know, I don't have to be on audios, conference calls all the time, having to do this, having to do that. What my clients want is what I do. Simple. I think how we at ASC, how the whole group works and how I work in helping and supporting clients is we have the expertise, let alone on how to structure the deals and how best to present it to the organisations. But I think as well is knowing who to present the deals to. You can have, Bank A will say no because they're not interested in that industry at the moment, but Bank B will say yes. Now, Joe Public or a businessman won't know that. It's not that the banks have shut the doors; they just haven't got an appetite for that particular deal. And I think how we help them, the expertise of the whole group, is we know who best to approach, how best to structure it to get the best results. And I think that is invaluable in today's market when the banks, especially in the last 18 months, 2 years, where banks have been changing their policies almost on a daily basis, keeping up with that and having the expertise to know who will, but, it can change. I've had a bank change its policy while I've been on the phone to them. You need to know what to do. And and as an organisation, clients can't, of course they can do it, but we're much better placed to be able to do that on their behalf, to get the positive answer that they want. It's really being there to provide support to clients and introducers. And I think what I was most proud of is, that I was, still getting the same amount of inquiries, but in a lot of cases, it was just talking to the clients saying, this is how it would work. This is best how for you to do it. Sometimes I personally couldn't help them, but it was giving that support. And obviously it's not advice, but it's guidance to where the market is at the moment, what we can and can't do. And I think it's really providing that support for the clients in 2021, which was a very hard year for everybody, in how to get their businesses going and hopefully then start moving forward. I think we understand a client gets emotionally involved in their deal. Of course they do. But we understand what the credit appetites are, how best to structure, what is likely to work. And it's managing that customer's expectations. Sometimes a client will come to, you might go to a bank, they say no, categorically no. They come to me and say, yeah, the bank said no because of this. If we structure it this way, the bank will say yes. That's how we best support SMEs. They don't have bank managers to speak to anymore. They go online to Birmingham or Manchester or where it might be, and they're dealing with someone with a tick sheet in a lot of cases. Coming to us, we know how to structure. We know what is more likely to get the banks to say yes, and I think that is invaluable at the moment. Let alone not wasting time. There's two factors. I think the first factor is sometimes getting the required information from a client. Though we still do a lot of the work on behalf of the client, it's still getting that information from the client, and especially when the SME market, that can be, smaller businesses, that can be quite difficult. And with the finance environment in the last 18 months to 2 years, the banks are looking and demanding a lot more information to understand how businesses have coped and if they've got longevity. And if you're a business that raised finance 4 years ago and now you're raising finance now, before it was a small amount of paperwork, small amount of requirement. Now it's quite a lot, and I think that is quite challenging for the small business. The second one, as I mentioned earlier, it is that constant moving landscape in the financial industries. It is understanding that, and that's probably the more challenging aspect. A deal that might have been done a year ago with a bank, now you go back to them, it's not. Okay, so you've got to restructure it and go to another one. It's understanding the moving landscape of the financial industry, which is a challenge, but in some ways it's quite a nice challenge because it makes everything a bit more interesting. It's not same old. It's a challenge. You've got to embrace it, really. I suppose the most complex, unusual one is an engineering company, and there was a property or a business. They actually wanted to purchase a business and property in North Essex on the coast, or one of the tributaries. And let alone it being an engineering company, let alone units, it also owned a marina, which is, it's just, the whole business there's about 4 businesses in one which they were purchasing. Some of the, being a marina, they might have owned the docks, but the actual beach itself or whatever they were going for was actually owned by the council. And I think that's probably the most unusual one, because every time we looked at the deal, or every time we got more information, the deal changed very slightly, because, you know, the client wasn't aware of this, the client wasn't aware of that. And I think that was probably the most unusual deal, because it was just, I've never been involved in the type of property. It's normally one thing or the other. This was like about 4 different things, the property they were buying and the business they were buying. And it was actually almost 4 different credit policies in one deal. And that was probably the most unusual. And to be fair, that was quite fun because it was so complex. It was working really closely with the accountant and the client. Yeah, we got it across the line, and it was that's probably the most unusual one, because every time I looked at the deal, it changed slightly. You know, he was trying to completely understand it, and it was like, is it this or is it that? But no, it's a lot of fun, and that's probably the more. I'll set the scene. I got a call from an introducer saying his client is in trouble and needs to very, very quickly raise finance, or he's going to lose his business. And he told me a bit about the business, and the client was an old client, lived North Essex. So I went to visit. I went to the introducer's business, and I met the client there. On driving through, I knew what the business was. I saw it was a car repair MOT centre. I actually saw it as I drove in on the outskirts of the town I was visiting, and I saw it was trading. I saw it was busy, cars in there, etc., etc. So I go in to see this guy, and this guy was about, how old was he? I think he was about 75, and he looked ill. He looked dreadful. And what had happened was he had a commercial mortgage with a high street lender, and the high street lender, when he hit 75, said they want their money back. So what he did is he approached a broker that had been introduced to him near where he lived. What happened though, this broker, all he heard, or she heard, was, I need the money really quickly to pay the high street lender back. So that broker went and got him a bridge, short-term bridge for 12 months. Stupidly expensive deal. So I'm sitting with the guy, and he's going, I can't afford to do this. I've got to pay them. If I don't pay them, they're going to repossess it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, what is the structure of your company? He goes, well, it's a partnership. I said, okay. So I say, you're not working there. He said, oh, no, I don't work there anymore. I kind of oversee it, but my sons work there. Are your sons part of the partnership? Well, kind of, yeah. Can you make them part of the partnership? Yeah. How old are your sons? In their 30s. Well, why don't we just do a commercial mortgage and put them on the mortgage? Can you do that? Yes, it's not a problem. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. So what I was most proud of, don't get it wasn't a huge deal or anything like that, but this guy had been given such poor advice, let alone initially from the initial bank, because all they had to do was go out and meet him and find out, or put the sons on the mortgage, they're in their 30s, we can do another 20-year mortgage. The bank hadn't spoken to him or understood his business. The other broker hadn't understood. All the broker's seen is short-term funding. Let's put him in a bridge because I earn more money. I go there and say, hey, let's do a 15, 20-year commercial mortgage. 6 weeks later, commercial mortgage. He can retire properly. Absolutely no stress. The guy looked ill. All he could see was, in 2 months' time, I have to pay someone back 250 grand. And that's probably what I was most proud of, is just, it was, to be fair, if you look at it, it actually was really simple. But it wasn't just getting the guy money. It was actually, the guy looked ill with the stress. He was that bad. You can imagine. He's a 76-year-old guy. I think he's going to lose everything he's earned work for because he's been given poor advice. And that's probably, that's what I think, you know, when you say, what do we add? I think that's what we had. We'll sit down and understand the business. And we'll give them what they should have, not what we think they should have, what best suits them. And yeah, that's probably the one I was most proud of and pleased about, because, you know, you can imagine the thanks I got from the guy and his wife, you know, because suddenly they can relax now, you know, and I'm sure they were having sleepless nights. Probably the most common one, after how long will it take, is what is the process? Okay, we've now had this meeting. What's next? You know, what is, you know, getting the agreement principle? What is getting the valuation? What is, you know, and again, I think that is part of my job, to explain the whole process, how it works, with what I'm going to do, banks are going to do, what the solicitors are going to do. And I think that's probably the question that I'm asked the most, outside of, you know, does it work? Will the deal work? Obviously, most clients believe it will work. They wouldn't have spoken to me. But I think it's you know, can you explain how the process in raising finance, how that works, and what are you going to do? And it's explaining that, and trying to give them pretty loose timeframes, but timeframes as well.